Good morning to everybody, and thank you for coming in an early hour of Saturday. I'm, as always, very happy to be with what I consider to be my MIFF family. I understand that there is a simultaneous translation going on. Okay. You know, and you've seen that in the invitations that was extended to this event, the title of my talk was The Current Situation. With your permission, I will say just a few words about that, because I believe that basically in this public you are very much familiar with the realities, and I would better discuss some other issues that I will touch upon immediately. But regarding the situation in Israel, in the Middle East, these days, I guess that you have all the information or most of the information that you need, in the sense that you see what is going on in the region. You see a process of disintegration of regional orders that has existed for more or less 100 years. States are disappearing from the map. Syria, Libya no longer practically exist. It's in a sense, it's back to a tribal order that existed before. The nation states are no longer there to a certain extent. And in the middle of all that, all of this chaos and violence and murder that you see all over the place, you see one state, Israel, that is trying to maintain, I would say, a Western structure, a democracy, a pluralistic society, an open debate, security for our population, Jews and non-Jews alike. In a way, we are in the eye of the hurricane, a hurricane that, of course, affects us, but also affects the rest of the world, and especially Europe, as we see with the growing number of immigrants, of refugees on one hand, and also the growing number of, I would say, violent attacks based upon radical extremism and Islamism, as Ben Dror has mentioned before. But what I would like, with your permission, and I will be ready to take questions later on, what I would like to focus on is what us and you here can do in order to make a difference. Ben Dror mentioned briefly that last week has been difficult in Israel. I mean, in the last, yesterday, our ambassador, outgoing ambassador to the UN, Ron Prosor, presented a request to the Security Council to condemn the fact that within 72 hours, 3 days, there were 11 terrorist attacks against Israelis who have been stabbed in separate cases. And you can add case number 12 this morning in Jerusalem, 2 people also injured by a stabbing. And maybe I'm not updated for the last hour or so, but it's a case of at least 4 or 5 events each day. Now, this is of course a difficult reality, but I would argue that maybe not less difficult was what we saw, or the outcome, or the reflections that we saw in the media. Ben Dror has mentioned BBC, but we had our examples here too. I mean, for example, after the case last week where 2 Israelis were stabbed to death in Jerusalem, the entrance of Palestinians as a security measure was banned from the West Bank to the old city of Jerusalem for 48 hours. The title in the media here was Palestinian entrance banned to East Jerusalem. And as Ben Dror said, 80% of the people, they just read the headline. You had to enter into the small letters to understand that this has been taken after 2 Israelis have been murdered by stabbing in the city. And of course, this comes to an absurd. I mean, sometimes there was one title said that a violent Palestinian has been shot by the Israeli police, instead of a Palestinian murdered 2 Israelis and then got shot. But it all serves a narrative, a framing of the story in which there is a role play for all the participants, and Israel is the bad guy and the Palestinians are always the victims, and this is how the media presents it, and it is done in a way that Orwell in his novels in 1984, War is Peace, Big Brother is Watching, wouldn't have dreamt it to happen. It is really a brainwash machine that I believe maybe North Korea is the only example that I can think about when coming into mind the way this campaign works. And this is part, or the media is part of an organized campaign, and Ben-Dror talked about that, and the question that should be asked is, what is the objective of this campaign? I mean, what do these people want to obtain? What is their goal? When they speak about Israeli or about Israel as killing, murdering children, as an apartheid state, a colonialistic state, ethnic cleansing, etc., 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 all the discourse that you hear when you hear about the boycott issue, time and time again, what do they want to obtain? Some of them, as Ben-Dror mentioned, are useful idiots in the service of others. But those others, basically what they would like to obtain at the end is to delegitimize the idea, the basic idea, that the Jewish people has the right to live independently in its own state. It is as simple as that. And unfortunately, they are having success. The idea, this very basic, I would say, idea that was in the past perceived as something a priori, as an axioma. The fact that Israel exists as the nation state of the Jewish people because of the right of the Jewish people to have its nation state, this is no longer a priori perceived as such in widening circles. And I would argue that our challenge as Israelis, Jews, friends and family of Israel, as is MIFF, is to fight back this erosion and bring back the notion that this discussion is not a conflict about territories or settlements or who is building where, but the basic questions that should be asked in this debate is, are you in favor of the right of the Jewish people to live independently in its own state? If your answer is yes, then let's discuss. If your answer is no, please say it out loud and don't hide behind lies and excuses. Now, just before going on and reflecting a little bit on what we can do, this campaign of lies brings us to sometimes, I would say, absurd situations. And I was just thinking the other day about a case here in Oslo. We have now the film festival, Films from the South, which is a very nice festival, and last year they had a very good Israeli movie. And this year they are opening with Tehran Taxi, which is an Iranian movie, and I'm all for it. And by the way, there is a lot of Iranian movies also screened in Israel because they are having a good industry in Iran, and by Iranian directors also in the diaspora. But this looks as the most natural thing in the world, and it is. I mean, it's a good movie. It comes from Iran, why not? But on the same time, there is another film festival here in Oslo called Human Rights, Human Wrongs that rejected an Israeli film about children with mental problems only because of the fact that the movie came from Israel, with the pretext that they are boycotting everything that is coming from Israel unless it deals with the so-called occupation. So the outcome that we can see at the end is that a country like Iran that has a record on human rights and promoting terrorism that we all know about doesn't have any problem of projecting its movies anywhere, while a country like Israel, with its records that we know, and I don't have to explain you, is boycotted by some part of the public opinion. And I think that if you want to give the gist of the absurd in one picture, this may serve as a good one. Now, I'm coming back to what we can do or should do in order to regain the legitimacy of the idea of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. And I'm mentioning that again and again because my aim and my message to you, and I am trying to implement that on my work as ambassador here, is that this is our challenge. We should focus on this point. We should make Norway a country where the voice or the message about the legitimacy of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people will come back to the table loud and clear, and where the debate will be focused on that and not on other issues. And also, I expect, I'm trying to do that myself, but I expect your help in order to convince Norwegian politicians from all parties, and I repeat, from all parties, to engage in this issue and say it out loud. There is a difference between Europe and the United States in that sense. President Obama, who is considered to be a liberal president, of course not from the right wing by far, he said some months ago in an interview to Atlantic magazine, he said that those, or better said, denying the right of Israel to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people is anti-Semitism. So we should take this saying by an ultra-liberal person like Obama and translate it and bring it to the table here. Now, I will start with self-critique. My government, my ministry, we, Israelis, are not doing enough regarding this issue. We are not dedicating enough budgets, we are not focused enough, we are not speaking loudly enough on this issue, and we should do by far more. And one very strong instrument in order to pass the message is the truth and the facts.